Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste. We carry forward our discussion on legal research method and methodology, and in today's lecture we shall discuss the different types of legal studies and methods of legal research with collaboration, doctrinal and non-doctrinal research. Let us start. So, this topic will cover the different types of legal studies: descriptive, exploratory, explanatory, historical, comparative, analytical study and applied study. And with this we will also going to discuss what is the collaboration research, what are the different approaches to a legal researcher, and what is doctrinal research as well as the non-doctrinal research. See, there are different kind of legal studies, and each kind of legal studies have their own purpose. Each kind of a legal study have their different methods and nature. So, one type of a study may differ from another in its characteristics, determined essentially by the method of its treatment. And hence, in many cases, however, a legal research involves the use of several approaches combined together. So, it is not like we can keep a one kind of a study in a one tight compartment. There was some time when the different studies they overlap. So, although legal studies they are distinguishable on the basis of their purpose, on the basis of the method, but as I already said that it does not imply that a specific research may be played into a one or other fixed and precise defined category. Particularly, a piece of research can have many purposes than one, and much legal research overlap and they fall more than in a single category. So, let us discuss that what is the descriptive studies. Descriptive studies talk about describing a study. So, it means that this approach seeks to find out what happened. It involves the ascertainment of the state of affairs in respect of any problem, any issue or any question. So, basically descriptive studies address what is happening, what happened. So, the goal of descriptive research is to discover the facts or describe some kind of realities while pursuing this kind of study. So, descriptive studies are undertaken either to ascertain or to describe social events, institution, group or behavioral patterns. So, the purpose of descriptive research is to describe the attitude, perceptions or characteristics of the phenomena or a particular group in population. So, we can say that the descriptive studies they describe what happened, when it happened, where it happened, why it happened and how it happened of any topic. So, descriptive study talk about what, when, where, why, how it happened. For example, descriptive study it might deal with such question as what are the people's attitude toward increasing the rate of the vehicle thefts, how they react, what they think about this. So, how the another example is that how widespread is child abuse. Now, the first example which I said, what are people's attitude toward increasing the rate of vehicle theft. Now, this study describe that what people think, what is their attitude, how they describe the increasing rate of the theft of the vehicles in that particular area. And the second example which I mentioned, that how widespread is a child abuse. Now, here researcher try to understand or he try to come with some finding or conclusion that how widespread is the child abuse, that what is the level of child abuse, where the child is abused, how the child is abused in the social scenario. So, the result of descriptive research are either summarized in numbers, maybe in percentage, and sometime maybe in another statistical way. Sometime researcher simply interested to explain what kind of a legal and administrative mechanism has been designed to ensure safety and quality of the food, food available to the consumer, with the ultimate object of determining whether any adequate measure has been taken by the legal and administrative mechanism, or whether there is any kind of inadequacy or gap in the existing legal system to address such kind of measures. So, all these things are addressed by the descriptive studies. Now, descriptive studies, they are the very first step in any kind of a legal research. I mean, in a legal survey, when the legal survey is designed, the researcher try to see what he has to do, what kind of a research he want to do, how he will approach the respondents, and what kind of objective he has to be framed for that research. So, all these things has been covered under the descriptive study, and that is why the descriptive study is always a very first step of any legal research. Coming on the exploratory study. Now, the word exploratory itself explains that now the researcher tried to explore something. He tried to explore something in his legal research, and that is why in an exploratory study, the researcher work on a relatively unstudied topic or any area of knowledge with the purpose of finding out either the unknown facts or maybe the facts which are partly known by the researcher or has not been discussed in detail. So, basically the aim of in exploratory research, that researcher try to develop some kind of plausible explanation. He want to come with some very confirmed conclusion or with very strong explanation of any particular incident or phenomenon. This exploratory research, it also referred to as interpretive research or as a grounded theory approach due to its flexible and open-ended nature. Why it is flexible and open-ended nature? Because in exploratory research, the researcher try to pursue the research which has not been addressed as yet, or if any research has been done by any researcher, that is partly or has not completely come with a very reasonable or plausible explanation for the same. Some type of legal study is often used when the issue or problems is new. So, it is useful preliminary step that help to ensure that a more comprehensive future study will not begin with an inadequate understanding of the nature of the problem. For example, the artificial intelligence is playing a very vital role nowadays in the professional people's working. The students are taking help to understand the different concepts while they are studying a particular subject. Now, the AI is benefiting the people, but the main time AI is also misused by the people for their personal purposes. Researcher want to do this study because on AI there is no sufficient data available. Researcher has no sufficient data. He has not much literature to review on this, and that's why researcher try to explore that what kind of phenomena or situation created while the AI is misused by the students or the any professional, etc. So, this is the exploratory study where researcher try to explore, because this thing has not even been addressed yet, or the researcher has come across the literature but he found lot of gaps and flaws in the study. So, that's why he want to explore on his own by the way of his own research. So, exploratory studies, they are very useful in framing a hypothesis for research. See, this is a very important aspect of a legal study. For a socio-legal research, hypothesis is a very important, and the formation of a hypothesis is absolutely based on the review of the literature. So, there also the exploratory study help in framing the hypothesis for research. So, if nothing is known or not enough is known about a topic, then it is really difficult to frame a hypothesis. So, to frame a hypothesis, explorative study or exploratory studies, they are very helpful. Next is the exploratory study. Now, the explanatory study, most of the studies in the field of a law, they go beyond the description, they go beyond that what happened, and seeks to explain a particular phenomena. When the study go beyond to the description, and when the study try to explain a particular phenomena, we call that now this is the explanatory study. So this is something which come a little bit up from the descriptive. So here researcher from description now try to explain, he tried to explain the phenomena. So explanatory approach, it seeks to tell why or how something happened. So descriptive study tell that what happened. Now from descriptive to explanatory study now focus that what happened, but how it happened, when it happened. So why or how is something which is addressed in explanatory research. So as the basic aim of legal research is to increase the knowledge and understanding in respect of law and related matter. So the goal of explanatory approach is to answer why and how questions in a legal research. Now see example. So example is that why do drug abuse and trafficking exist in serious proportion? Now see here, why do drugs and trafficking exist in serious proportion? Now this is the serious proportion in certain areas despite the presence of tough law. Now this is very important. Now researcher here try to understand that the law is here and it is mentioned in this question, the presence of a tough law. So law, very rigid law is here to punish the people if they caught doing trafficking or if they are doing the drug peddling, etc. So here in explanatory research, why do drugs abuse and trafficking exist in a serious proportion in certain area despite the presence of a tough law will be explained by the researcher, because he tried to explore that why it happened. The another example is how or in what way has law been used as a mechanism of providing social security. To whom social security? In some matters as workers' right or security of employment, occupational safety or health measures. Now in this example, the one thing which is very common that in both the example or maybe in the three example, researcher try to understand how, researcher try to know why. So this how and why kind of questions are addressed in the explanatory studies. So in some cases, it may be desirable to go beyond the simple description of a phenomena. I mean, it is not sufficient to explain, okay fine, this thing happened, why the thing happened, why the problem arise, what is the reason behind that problem. That is important to address, and there the exploratory study is very helpful to understand the phenomena, how and why it happened. Now the another example is here. See, a descriptive study, for example, shows the incident of crime against women in certain areas of a city is higher than the other areas. A descriptive study. So descriptive study tell us that in a particular city, in the north side of the north area of the particular city, the rate of a crime against women is higher than the other areas, maybe of the south areas or the east area of Delhi. The rate of a crime is very high in the north area of the Delhi. Now this is descriptive, the study described, this is there, this is this. This information may be useful, but it may not be enough. Reason behind, okay fine, this is described that the rate of a crime against women is higher in the North Delhi. Why the rate of a crime against women is higher in the North Delhi area, not in a South or in a West Delhi area, that is a question which need to be addressed to come with some remedies or some legal provision to address the issue in that particular area. And that's why this explanatory research might show why the crime rate is higher in specific area, because with the help of this research, the researcher come to the conclusion maybe because of the police stations or the Mahila Thanas, they are not much there in that particular region, that's why the females, they are not approaching to the police authorities. Maybe the women, they are of the impression that it will become a matter of a social stigma if they go and inform the police about the crime, if something happened to them. So that's why this explanatory study is important to understand that what is their mentality or their thought about not reporting the cases into the thana, or why there is increase in the crime against the women, and it is so high in that particular area, why the women they are not addressing such issues to the police authorities. Coming to next, historical studies. Now, historical studies approach, it involves the study of past facts, events or institution. The purpose of such approach may be to find out how and why certain rules, principles or institution have come to take their present form. Let us take an example. For example, the amendment in Hindu Succession Act of 1956 in the year 2005, it comes with the amendment that now the daughters also have the right in the ancestral property of their parent, father. So it means that now the girls become the co-partner with their brother for the ancestral property. But before 2005, the law was that it was only the male, the males or the co-partner, the male co-partner in the family, they have a right to inherit the ancestral property. Now researcher try to understand why that, what was the reason behind this. So what he or she did, they try to see the background of the co-partnery, and then they come to the conclusion, oh, before the codification of the law, the co-partnery is concerned with a spiritual performing of some religious things when the death of the eldest person in the family happened. So the co-partners are eligible to do or perform the pindadana at the death of the any family members. So in historically, the concept of co-partnery was purely spiritual in nature. But the moment when the law was codified, when the Hindu Succession Act come into existence, when it was enacted in 1956, then the males members till the 4 generations, the last one who is holding the property, and then the 3 generations, they were considered the co-partner and they are entitled to inherit the ancestral property. But in 2005, the law is amended. The girls, the daughters, they become the co-partner for the ancestral property with the reference that not giving them the right to inherit the ancestral property or equal to their brothers, it is totally the violation of Article 14 of the Constitution. So, the historical study is also very, very important to understand why certain rules, principle, institution, they have come to take their present form. So, where the purpose of a research study or a part of it to find the origin, or when it is to trace the development of anything that has come to some relationship of a law, the approach is termed as the historical study of the past. So, historical approach is also enable the researcher to understand historical development of a law in any specific area in order to assess the utility or the adequacy of the law as it exists now, or the need, if any, for change and reforms. Now, this is very important. If researcher want to highlight some issues, problems in the society which according to him are really in need to address and there need to be bring some reforms in society, at that point of a time, this historical study itself become a foundation for the further descriptive, exploratory and explanatory study, and that's why the historical research is also very, very important. So, a researcher usually rely on public private document for historical study, majorly on the debates, then files, maybe diaries or maybe the past newspapers, articles, manuscript, books, social, economic or a political material throwing light on the socio-legal problem. Now, why I am talking about that these are the documents, because this is very, very important. If researcher want to pursue a historical studies, from where he will get the data, how he will collect the data, and that's why in historical research this is really, really important for us to understand that researcher has to be sometime collect the data even from the diaries. even from the past newspapers, maybe from the debates, maybe from the legislative debates, maybe sometime maybe from the private documents. Now, comparative study. Comparative study is very popular among the law scholars, the students, because in this contemporary era, the comparative legal research has gained a very high level of importance, very high level of importance. So, the more comparative approach is adopted by the researcher, the more accurate and specific result is gained by the researcher. So, comparative research involve either wholly or sometime partly the study of some legal problems. It sometimes address a issue or questions in a comparative perspective. So, comparative law is viewed as both a social science and a legal art, with one approach focusing on comparating history and the other comparative legislation. So, basically the objective of this comparative research, it may be either to be present information existing in two or more different factual context, or it may be examine the merits and demerits in a comparative perspective. Now, this is very important that researcher try to examine what? Either merits or demerits in a comparative perspective. He is trying to compare, he try to understand the two sides on the one basic context or on a one phenomena or on a one scenario, and then he try to understand that where the two of them, they are different on what factual context, and that is why this comparative study is sometime is called compare and contrast views. Sometime it is used to understand the idea, values, rules and principle theories that are some varying on law or its institution. Now, coming to the example of comparative legal research, comparative studies. For example, a researcher may examine the nature and scope of inheritance rights of a woman in India, and he try to understand that what is the nature and rules which are applicable in woman inheritance under any other legal system. Now, researcher try to see that what are the rights of inheritance for women available under the Hindu codified law. As the few minutes back I talked about the Hindu Succession Act of 1956, and then he tried to compare this with the inheritance right of the woman in some other country, maybe in some other country in South Asia. Now, here the researcher tried to compare the factual context of the problem, how the women rights, women are inheriting the property in another country, and what is the status of the inheritance right of a woman in India, and that is why in this kind of a study is called as the comparative study. As I already said, that comparative study is very famous and it is very popular in this contemporary time. The another type of a legal study is analytical study. Analytical study is totally a qualitative inquiry. It is a qualitative inquiry. Why so? Because this type of research or study, it involves critical thinking skills. It involves the evaluation of the facts and information which is related to the research being conducted. So, this kind of a study, analytical, it involves a very careful examination and evaluation of something in order to understand something, in order to explain it, or maybe to come to conclusion, or maybe draw some inferences for this. Now, see the one example which is on your screen. For example, examining the fluctuation of crime rate of India between 2010 to 2020, this is an example of descriptive research. So, descriptive research, the researcher comes with the description that according to the NCRB data, within 2010 to 2020, the crime rate in India was this much. Now, while explaining why and how the crime rate spiked, now this is analytical, how the crime rate spiked over the time. Now, this is an example of analytical research. This is analytical research. So, descriptive research show that the rate of a crime in India, it fluctuates. So researcher try to explain through the descriptive explanation that from 2010 to 2020, somewhere between 2010 to 2015, the rate of crime was increased in India, but then by 2015 to 2017, it may increase, but then after it increase. Now, this kind of research, when researcher come with the conclusion or the findings, we say that now this is an example of analytical research where researcher address why and how the crime rate suddenly increase over the time. Now, this is the analytical research. So, analytical research is give a person a very close reasoning. It try to make the person understand what is the reasoning in a legal research. Now, coming on the applied research is very popular in multidisciplinary research. Applied research in any social scientific research, it is designed to answer the practical question. Now we need to understand that what is the practical question, or sometimes it is addressed to find the solution to the immediate problem. Immediate problem means that the researcher has no time to review the literature because something which come in a hand and now you have to come with the solution or a remedy immediately for that. So, we can say that applied study is a straightforward practical approach to the case researcher is handling. Now, here means that it involves full-fledged research on a specific area of law, followed by gathering information on all the technical legal rules and principles which are applied and forming an opinion on the prospectus, the client in the scenario. So, applied studies are the studies where the researcher is trying to provide the solution immediately in hand, because researcher has no time to see the literature or see the articles. There is nothing like this. Applied science means you have to provide solution immediately, instantly, because the problem in hand is of the nature that researcher has to find the solution for that. Now, take an example on your screen. For example, if a client is an employee of an organization and he is fighting against wrongful termination of the contract. So, organization fired employee and they terminate his contract. Now, the practical approach to this would be carefully evaluating the company policies and then finding company policies that were violated and to suing the organization based on those arguments. So, it means that the lawyer has to see that what are the remedy available, what are the contract policies his client has signed with the company, and then he will immediately try to see that whether the company has violated the condition in the contract or not. If it is so, we call this is the applied studies where the practical question is addressed by the researcher and he tried to come with the solution immediately for the problem. So, applied research. Now, for example, a research might be carried out to find answer to such question: what kind of social or legal measures would we reduce poverty among laborer class in the hilly regions? Which type of administrative or legal measures will minimize the workplace harassment of women in certain type of industries? These are the examples of the applied research. So, applied research often use experiment and develop and refine new knowledge, basic knowledge, to use that knowledge for the improvement of the human situation. So, here this example where the researcher, for example, he tried to see that what kind of a social and legal measure will use to reduce the poverty among the labor class in hilly regions. So, what he has to be do now, he has to be see that what kind of a measure is important, what he can suggest in his finding, that how the poverty can be reduced in the hilly areas among the labor class. Or when researcher try to understand that how the work harassment of a woman in certain place can be reduced. So, it means that researcher has to be applied studies. Researcher has to be see that whether experimental way is better to develop and refine the new knowledge he want to get on the basis of the basic knowledge, or he can improve the situation, the human situation, with the help of the new knowledge he has about the specific phenomena. Now, after this, let us see that what is collaboration research. Collaboration research is a very powerful approach that brings together individuals from diverse background. They work together toward a main goal. So, collaboration research is also interdisciplinary research, and sometimes the collaboration research is also where the researcher from the same field, they come from the different expertise, they come together, they work together on specific project or on specific research. Collaboration research, it shared learning and innovation. It promotes shared learning and innovations. Collaboration research, it promote, what it promote? Shared learning and innovation. So, because it is a kind of a collaborative research, so the researcher from the different backgrounds or with the different expertise, they come together, they come together and ultimately they come with the better outcomes than traditional research method. So, collaborative research is a contemporary kind of a research method which is very popular in interdisciplinary research, and sometimes, as I already said, that experts from the same background, I mean from with the different specialties, they come together and they collaborate to work on any research project or research project or in other specific field or a topic of research. So, this type of a research allow more comprehensive understanding of the research problem, and it can lead to innovative solution. Now, if we have to be understand, or if we have to be see that what kind of a collaboration research can be pursued by the person who is from the law background and a person who is from the IT background. So, we can take an example. For example, nowadays the mobile phone is used by the people here in India for the money transaction, to use the social platform, for educating themselves, for the entertainment purpose and all that, etc. But how many people they are aware that if there is any kind of fraud happen to them online, what to do, how to do, what is the law for that, how to protect persons to involve in a online trap, sometime which may be maybe telephonically asking an OTP number, and the people they believe that this is a call from the bank or maybe from the company from there, they ask for any kind of a product, and then they share the OTP, and later they realize that the bank account is totally zero, bank balance is totally zero. So, this collaborative research will bring together the legal expert who understand that what is the information technology law of India, and the researcher from the information technology background. They come together, they collaborate together, and then with this they might be come with some solution, or the IT person will come with some solution. I mean, he can help to making an app which actually help the people to protect from such online transaction frauds, and the legal expert can help framing the guidelines or to help the people to understand that such kind of offences they are punishable under the Information Technology Act. So, these kind of studies we call that this is a collaborative research. These are the collaborative research. So, these collaborative research, they can be either homogeneous and heterogeneous. Now, what is homogeneous? Homogeneous means it involves individuals or a group Now this individual or a group, as I already said, they share the similar background, or they may be share the similar perspective. We call them, this is a homogeneous group. They are from the same backgrounds. They are there to discuss the same issue, but they are come together in a collaboration to help each other in the research project or in some new research problem. And heterogeneous research involve individual or group with diverse background. As I said, I just give an example where the one person he's from the law background, the another person he's from the IT background, and because of some digital frauds or maybe because of some other problems in the society, they come together to pursue a research, to do a research that how to cure, how to provide some remedies in such kind of incident or the online platform frauds. So both types, whether it is a heterogeneous or heterogeneous or homogeneous, both research have their advantages and they can lead to the new site or discoveries. So team members, they might be of a different backgrounds, they might have a different expertise, they might have a different research interest, but yes, in this type of research, when they come together, they might have a much more challenges, but still this type of a research also come with a very creative research outcomes, a very innovative solutions or an idea, while collaborative research has been conducted by the researcher. And that's why by combining the strength of multiple perspectives, the collaborative research create a strong foundation for the development of new ideas and solutions. Now, approaches to legal research. Legal research is often classified into two broad categories. When research is concerned with some legal problem, issue or a question, it is referred to a doctrinal research. We call this a pure legal research. We also call it theoretical research. We also call it a traditional research. And when legal research involves a study of some aspects of society or social problems, issue or a question, and that time we term it as a non-doctrinal, or sometimes we call it as a socio-legal research. The reason behind that this kind of a research is involve society or social problems, sometimes issue or questions which are related to the society or they may be related to the social problem, and because of this reason we call this as a non-doctrinal research. This is not traditional, this is not something which will be conducted by researcher inside the library, which is only possible with the help of the literature whatever is available either on online or maybe in the library. It is not possible with the primary and secondary data. For non-doctrinal research, researcher has to go to field to collect data, understand what kind of the issue or problem is there in society, and that's why the non-doctrinal research is also called as a socio-legal research. This research is also known as a empirical research, where the researcher collect the data with the help of different tools. So later in next lecture, maybe we will discuss the research designs of the socio-legal research and also the doctrinal research. Now coming back on the point of what are the different approaches to the legal research, this non-doctrinal research can be qualitative and quantitative. Now we need to understand this, that non-doctrinal research is qualitative or quantitative. So non-doctrinal research, it maybe give us findings which are qualitative and also quantitative. Quantitative means when the data is collected and the researcher try to quantify that, means the data come in the form of percentile. Maybe the researcher come and show the data that this percent people are of the view of this and this percent people they are not of the opinion of this. So non-doctrinal research can be qualitative or it is a quantitative. However, this doctrinal research is only qualitative. Why so? Because the doctrinal research does not involve the statistical analysis of the data. There is no statistical analysis of the data in doctrinal research, but non-doctrinal research, it is quantitative and qualitative also, because the socio-legal research cannot complete while the researcher is sitting within the library. He has to be go out to the field, he has to be collect the data, he has to be observe the behavior of the people or his respondent, he has to be observe, he has to be interact with the respondent, he has to be understand their behavior, attitude, and he has to be interact with them, and it is only possible either through interview, it is possible either through giving the questionnaire to them to fill and respond, and it is possible through the observation by the researcher to his respondent and collect the information and pen down that information. So, non-doctrinal research is qualitative as well as the quantitative. Now, there is also a third format of legal research. So, one is doctrinal, another is non-doctrinal. Now, this third one is, this is a combination, this is a combination of doctrinal either or non-doctrinal or a combination of both, and it is performed by the comparative legal method. Now, we already understand, we already discussed few minutes back that what is the comparative legal method. So, the third format of legal research, it consists of either doctrinal, non-doctrinal, sometime maybe the combination of a doctrinal and non-doctrinal research, and by using the comparative legal method. Now, we will discuss in detail that what is the doctrinal research. As I already discussed, I already tell that doctrinal research is defined research into the legal doctrines. Research into legal doctrines, how? Through analysis of statutory provisions and the cases by the application of the power of the reasoning. Now, this is very important, the power of the reasoning. So, doctrinal research defined research into legal doctrines. How? Through the analysis of the statutory provisions and cases by the application of the power of the reasoning. And because of this reason, this research referred to theoretical, pure, academic, traditional, conventional, armchair research. Armchair research. Why? Why it is armchair research? Because a researcher don't need to go outside into the field and collect the data. He has to be simply sit in the library, maybe with his laptop and some books from the library, maybe the primary sources or the secondary sources. So, he has to be there in library with his table and chair, with the literature he has, with the data he has to be go through that data, and then he has to be come to the conclusion, and then he we can say that he is doing the doctrinal research. See, this research is a research which focuses on analyzing and interpreting the legal documents. Research is, doctrinal research is interpreting the legal document. Now, what kind of legal document? Maybe the statutes, maybe the case laws, maybe regulation and treaties, in understanding the legal concept, principles and doctrines. Now, let us take one example. One example we take that the Honorable Supreme Court has passed a judgment on triple talaq. In this judgment, the Honorable Supreme Court pronounced that triple talaq is unconstitutional and it is violating the basic human rights of the Muslim women under Article 14 of the Constitution. Now, researcher want to understand that what is the basis on the basis of which the Honorable Supreme Court has passed this judgment. Now, the researcher download the judgment from the Manupatra and then he tried to give a thorough reading to the judgment, because this judgment was passed by the ratio of 3/2. So, the researcher is more keen to understand that why the two judges they have the dissenting opinion or a view on the triple talaq. He don't need to go anywhere. He simply need to be sit in library with his laptop and read the judgment on triple talaq, and maybe after completing the reading of the whole judgment, he might come to the conclusion of the judgment and he maybe give the the analysis of the judgment, and we can say this type of a research is a doctrinal research. So, the focal point of doctrinal research is answering the question. Now, what is the question? What is law? What is law? So, researcher here in non-doctrinal research, he tried to find out answer to the legal question. How? Through investigation. And how he is doing investigation? He is investigating through the books, he is investigating through the legislatures, he is investigating through the statutes, through the commentaries and the other legal document, as we discussed the example of the judgment of a triple talaq by the Honorable Supreme Court. And researcher, he simply download the judgment, go through the judgment, and then he finally try to analyze that whether the judgment is actually for the betterment of the Muslim woman in India or not. So, this type of a research is possible with the help of primary sources, secondary sources, because it is theoretical research, hence it will not involve any kind of experimentation or any kind of field work. Not required, not at all. This research is possible inside the library. That is why we call this is traditional, this is conventional research, right. Now, let us discuss what is the methodology of doctrinal research. Doctrinal research is a methodology that focus on analyzing and interpreting legal documents. Now, we need to keep one thing in mind when we are doing the doctrinal research, that it focus on analyzing or interpreting legal documents, not more than that. So, in a doctrinal research, either researcher will analyze or he will interpret the document, and hence the doctrinal research involve identification of the research problem in a very first hand. Why so? Because researcher has to be very much clear about the questions, the problem, research problem or the research question, and clarifying the scope of that research. So, when I said in an example that researcher he want to understand, or when he try to understand that what is the judgment, the judgment of a triple talaq. Now, in this case researcher try to interpret, he try to analyze the judgment, and on the basis of that judgment he will come to the conclusion. So, the doctrinal research also talk about the collection of legal resources. So, the researcher has to be collect the legal sources, like he has to be see the statutes, regulation, case law, legal treatise, and then evolution of legal resources. So, once the legal sources have collected, now researcher must evaluate them. For what? To determine their relevance, reliable and credibility. So, whether they are relevant for his research or whether they are important for his research or not. And then the analysis of legal resources. So, after evaluating the legal resources, now the researcher must analyze them. So, after evaluating the legal resources, he will analyze the legal resources for what? To identify the legal principles, concept and the argument. And now, after this, we will see that what are the merits of doctrinal research. There are so many merits of doctrinal research. See, doctrinal research is provide a very clear and concise answer to the legal question, as because it is totally based on the legal text that are authoritative sources of law. So, as I already said that the main sources of the doctrinal research is that researcher can review the literature, primary sources are there, the secondary sources are there. So, actually the clarity is a first merit of the doctrinal research, because it allows researcher to identify and analyze the legal concept, principle, doctrine, etc. Secondly, this is cost effective. Researcher don't need to go anywhere. He has to be sit in his library on his table, chair and table, and then he can access legal documents online, library, and then analyze all the documents and he pursue his research. This is also time efficient. This is also time efficient, because researcher has to be do the research within his home or maybe in the library. So, this is a time efficient methodology, because documents are already available to him. He has the statutes, so the researcher can use all the legal research tools and methodologies to streamline the research process. Then doctrinal research is also the foundation of the further research, and it also enhances the professional development of the researcher as well, because it enables them to develop a deeper understanding of a legal concept. It also helps them to apply the legal doctrine to the real world problems. And yes, the another merits of doctrinal research is that it provides the appropriate guidance. Demerit is that doctrinal research is very limited in scope, because it is limited to study of a legal resource, which may not provide a very comprehensive kind of understanding to a particular issue. So, we can say that it may overlook non-legal factors that can affect actually the legal outcomes actually. Second, that sometimes the doctrinal research is biased, because it may be the one-sided analysis by the researcher, right. So, the chances of biasness is more there, because there is no empirical study, there is no study outside the the library. So, the lack of empirical evidence is also there, which is also very major drawback in the doctrinal research, and then it is also difficult in predicting the outcomes. Doctrinal research is primarily focused on the analyzing the past legal decisions. So, this research is not in a capacity to predict what the outcomes. So, that is also a demerit, and then also it is also limited in applicability. Now, non-doctrinal research, it referred to socio-legal research. It also referred field study, empirical research, and it referred to the study of some aspect of law in operation, maybe law in context or law in action, which means now this is a study which talk about how law operate in the social context, how law deal or how law should deal with the special problem, issue or the question. Now, this is the socio-legal research. That is why we call this as socio-legal research. This socio-legal research or non-doctrinal research, it involves the empirical methods to analyze legal institution, practices, policies within the social context. And therefore, the socio-legal research is used to refer a study that combines the legal research with an investigation of some problem, some issues which is essentially of a social nature, and use techniques for the data collection in social science research. See, usually the underlying aim of the socio-legal research is to determine the nature and extent either of the adequacy or inadequacy of the existing law. So, this research involves a combination of qualitative and quantitative research, and the tools which are used for the non-doctrinal research is interview, case studies, survey and statistical analysis. Merits of this research is that it lays a different and lesser emphasis upon the doctrines, because this is purely a practical study. It seeks answer which is broader, and it can be address a number of questions, mean more than one question can be addressed in a non-doctrinal research. Then its merit is that it is a systematic study. Now, the systematic study try to discover unknown or sometime maybe the partly known factors which are working behind a particular phenomena, or to understand with why something happened. And yes, it also identify the cause and effect of a certain problem. And the another merit of the socio-legal research is its applicability to the real world problem. It aid to evaluate what is the usefulness of a law in variety of non-legal effect. See, law is for the society. Law is for the society, and that is why it is very important to understand the society, because law is operative in the society. And that is why the research like a non-doctrinal research or a socio-legal research, which are actually researcher go to the field and collect data, they are really very helpful to the formation of the new policies, or maybe sometime to change the law, or maybe sometime to bring into the notice of the governments, or maybe to bring into the notice of the governments to do something for the betterment of the respondent which are the part of that particular research. demerits of non-doctrinal research is that it is very time consuming. Of course, the researcher has to go to the field, he has to collect the data, he has to decide what the tool he will opt, and then it is a time consuming process. It need a lot of time to collect the data. So, that is why the non-doctrinal research cannot provide a remedy in hand. For example, after the Nirbhaya case, in January 2013, the Justice Verma committee has given the report. On the basis of that report, in the month of Feb, India come with the Criminal Amendment Act of 2013, purely doctrinal research. But this is not possible in the case of non-doctrinal research. This is a very time consuming. In that case, the researcher has to go to the field, he has to collect the data, he has to see that what kind of questions he will address, and he collect the data, then interpretation of that data, and after that the researcher come to conclusion and he come with the findings. So, sometimes the non-legal research is not feasible when the problem need a solution in hand. So, sometimes the ability of the funds, yes, this is a very big challenge for the researchers to pursue empirical research, because unless the research is funded or sponsored by the researcher agencies, it is not possible to pursue such kind of research. And sometimes, as I said, it cannot give a direction as to what course the law should follow to be useful. It only comes with the findings. Now, how law should be followed, what is the useful for that? Non-doctrinal research never come with this, and it cannot remain unaffected from the human bias. There are chances that researcher maybe become biased because of some particular situation, phenomena, because of his maybe because of some awareness, or maybe because of some personal things, researchers sometimes become biased. So, both form of legal research, they have their own share of advantages and disadvantages. One is rooted in a theory, the other in practicality, and as a theory cannot be sacrificed for practicalities alone and vice versa. So, both of them, they have their separate role in the field of legal research. Therefore, both of these form are complementary to each other. Both of these research, they are complementary to each other, and they both have the equal relevance and values while doing a legal research. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to this piece of literary snippet. Perhaps the most popular literary genre after novel is the short story. Sharp, compact narratives whose charm lies not only in what is said, but also in what remains unsaid. Today I will be reading one of the shortest instances of a short story that I have ever encountered, and indeed, the very charm of this particular story that I am going to read out today lies in the way it abruptly ends. It is an ancient tale from Mesopotamia, which has been retold by several authors, among whom the name of Somerset Maugham stands out. The adaptation that I will be reading out is perhaps the closest to the one that Maugham wrote. The story is titled, in all of its adaptations almost, as Appointment in Samarra. Here is the story. A merchant in Baghdad once sent one of his servants to the market. The servant was supposed to buy provisions for the merchant, but when he returned, he came back empty-handed. Indeed, the servant had all gone white, and trembling with fear, he told his master that he had met death in the marketplace. When I entered the market, the servant said to his master, I was jostled by a woman, and when I turned to look at her, I saw that she was Death. I am very scared, master, because Death looked at me with a threatening gesture. Can you please lend me your horse so that I can fly away from Baghdad to the town of Samarra and thereby escape death? The master, being a good man, gave his servant his best horse and saw him gallop off to Samarra to escape death. Then the master himself went to the marketplace and confronted Death. Why did you make a threatening gesture to my servant? Asked the master to Death. And Death replied, it was not a threatening gesture. Rather, it was a start of surprise. I was astonished to see your servant here today, because this evening I have an appointment with him in Samarra. See you in the next episode of Literary Snippet.